Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good following morning. It is September 11th, 9/11. We'll talk about that in a minute. This is AMA number 25. Today I have a very, very good friend of mine, somebody who's very close to, named Cheryl Fishbein, who is a New Yorker, a native New Yorker, and I thought it was important today on 9/11, as we're 19 years past September 11th, to have somebody, another New Yorker on the show with me. Cheryl is amazing. She is just about the most involved community Jewish leader that I know, and is going to tell you all. We'll talk to her about her really fascinating life and just involvement philanthropically. Is a wonderful person, very close to me, so it's great. I'm happy to have her on the show. Hi, Saul from Seacliff. How you doing, Saul? Good morning, Laurie. Early for you out in LA. Good to see you. Good. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Today is Friday. Now, why is today Friday? Well, today's Friday because yesterday was Thursday and tomorrow is Saturday. But the real question is, why are we doing the AMA on Friday this week instead of Thursday? Good morning, Jen. Hi, Jen and Juliet. The reason we are doing the AMA today is because I was away yesterday and traveling, and I couldn't swing it. I was actually on a plane. Where was I? I went back to Greece. Went back to my little island of Kalymnos. It was Kasha's birthday, as I mentioned a few times. It was a big birthday for Kasha. So we were going to go away somewhere, and after the experience that we had last time in Kalymnos, we thought we couldn't think of any other better place, and Kasha wanted to go back. So we flew back to Kalymnos, spent about 3 days there on Kalymnos. It was wonderful, amazing weather, great food. It was like, it felt like a little bit like Cheers. Like people remembered that we were there because we were only there a few weeks earlier. So people remembered that we were there, and were really just loved that we'd come back and flew all the way back just to be there. When you're places that are dependent on tourism, really appreciate these days when people make the effort to visit them. So it was something very special. So we had a great time, spent a few days there, flew through Athens. On the way in, didn't really have time it was Sunday and didn't have much time to go into the city, but on the way back yesterday, the things were open, and we had about 4.5 hours, which was enough time to go into the city. Now for me, Athens, there's a lot of good things in Greece that I really like, but especially one of the things, yogurt, which you can't really travel with, but nuts. Nuts are one of the things that I like best. So in Athens, we hurried into the city and looked around a little bit and went to the main market where I got the most amazing pistachios. There's 2 different islands, 2 different places in Greece where they really have pistachios, and one of these islands, pistachios, unbelievable. So it was that was great. Did a quick run in Athens to get pistachios. Oh, hey, this is a first. One of my new friends from Kalymnos is tuning into my AMA. Worlds collide. Nectarios, how are you doing, my friend? Great to see you. Great to see you. I'm just always talking about Kalymnos. I should, it's my new favorite place in the world. So good to see you. Hi, Rabbi Avi, Shabbat Shalom. And Jeffrey Rolat, good to see you, Jeffrey. But as you all know, I have my sign obsession. And of course, I would never take a sign from Kalymnos. Kalymnos is actually interesting. It's such a small island that they don't have many signs. The streets don't really have names. If you wanted to say, if I was on Kalymnos, you would just write me a letter and it would say Jonathan Ornstein and then the little town on Kalymnos that I was in, and that would be enough for the postman. But when I was on Kos, we had to fly to Kos, which is near Kalymnos, and then take the ferry to Kalymnos. So we flew Krakow to Athens, then Athens to Kos, and from Kos you take a short ferry ride. So when I was on Kos, I did find an abandoned sign. Ta-da! From Kos. It was abandoned, and I thought it was okay to take it. So there you go. My newest sign. I'm very proud of this one. my collection gets even more international with a sign from Kos, which was abandoned. Don't worry, I didn't pull it off a pole. God forbid I would ever do anything like that. It was lying there. I have a photo of it lying on the ground. So do not worry about that. Anybody thinks that I would be engaging in any unlawful activity, maybe sometimes, but not this time. So that was our trip to Greece. It's great to be back. Good morning, Victorious Warner. Good to see you, Vicky. That was Greece. So the pistachios, and they got the sign, and just had a very restful, wonderful few days in Greece. And we're not sure when we'll get back, but we really found just a special little corner of the world that we really feel good at. Shabbat tonight, we'll have Shabbat dinner at the JCC. That's always exciting, of course, with distancing, and we do it outside. Hopefully it won't be too cold for the seniors. If it is, we'll have to move it inside. Rosh Hashanah coming up next week. We're going to split everything up and do it separately. Instead of having the whole community together, we will have things divided by age. So the seniors and survivors will have Thursday night at dinner, community besides the seniors Friday night, and then on Sunday we'll have an early dinner for the families with the young children. So it's a great thing to be able to have the community together, but these days we're happy to be able to just have the celebration and to be able to come together. Even if it's not everybody together, then it'll still be okay. Personally speaking, for me, I get to come to 3 Rosh Hashanah celebrations. Lucky Kasha gets to cook 3 separate meals instead of 1, so we all benefit from it. But we're happy that listen, even though this year has been difficult, I'll tell you that as much as we complain and it's so difficult and wearing masks and isolation and all the stuff that we're going through, when you're a Jew living in Poland and sort of surrounded all the time by, at least by the presence of the absence and what was here, it puts things in perspective. So however upset and depressed I can get personally about Corona and this whole situation we find ourselves in, I'm often reminded, and it takes me about 5 seconds when I see our survivors and realize what they've been through and how much worse things can be. So we'll be all right. Things will get better, and we'll all get through this. But today is, of course, speaking of tragedy and getting through things, not to bring things too far down, but today is 9/11. It's been 19 years since the terrible terrorist attack on September 11th killed over 3,000 people. The plane attacks on the Twin Towers, and of course the plane crash in Pennsylvania and the one in the Pentagon. I'm going to talk to Cheryl a little bit about her recollection being there, being as a New Yorker. But I don't know, not everybody really knows this, but I actually worked for 2 years in the World Trade Center. At the end of high school, I had an internship in the World Trade Center, and then I took a year off after and spent what they call a gap year. I don't know if they say in the US, but in England, they call it a gap year if you take a year off before college. So I worked in the World Trade Center in the governor of New York's office. So the governor is, of course, in Albany, the capital, but he has a New York City office, and that office used to be called the Executive Chamber, and it was in the World Trade Center in number 2, which is the South Tower, on the 57th floor. And I worked there in the press department for 2 years. It was very exciting because I was there kind of full time, but most of the other people were there that were interns were there. They were college students and grad students, and they were all much, much older than me, but they were there part-time. So I sort of I would not to be in charge or to do anything too special, but I was in a good position because I was there full time. So I got to sort of, I don't know, have some fun there, being there all the time. And to be honest, if you guys remember that this is the first Governor Cuomo, Mario Cuomo, Andrew's father, was the governor of New York. And there was a lot of talk, if you remember, in 1988, that he was going to run for president. He was really a big, as a Democrat, of course, the front runner in terms of the potential candidates for president. And I was really excited because I happened to be in this place as an 18-year-old, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid working in the governor's office. I always liked politics, and he was going to run for president. And all these people that I was in daily contact with all the time were going to be the people that would be, you know, staffing the cabinet if he won. So it was very, very cool. And I was thinking like, oh, I'm just set in this really interesting position. But then he didn't run for whatever reasons. We never really knew what it was. He didn't want to do it. People said skeletons in the closet, which never really made too much sense to me. But I think that was just a little bit sort of racist, that he was Italian. They were always saying, oh, mafia ties, that he was Italian. I don't no real proof of that or anything. Just because he was Italian, they would say that. So anyway, he didn't run for president. That was that. I had my 2 years at the World Trade Center, which was a lot of fun down there. And then that was my connection. So when 9/11 happened in 2001, I was living in Israel. I remember I was in Eilat, and I was in the kibbutz. And I remember I was supposed to go to Eilat that day, and I was there with my ex-girlfriend. We were going to go. There was like a Japanese cooking class or something that we're going to go to, like learn how to make sushi or something. And when I saw that the first plane hit, I was like, it didn't register. And I was like, oh, are we going? And she's like, are you crazy? What do you mean? A plane just hit the water? And I was like, then I realized, oh my God, what's going on? And I sat and I watched it all live, which because it was later, it was 7 hours later. So it was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon in Israeli time. And just as it is for everybody, utterly shocking. It doesn't feel like 19 years ago. And then right after that, I moved to Poland. So I came to Poland in October 2001. So it was just still right after 9/11 and came to Israel. The one thing I will say about 9/11, though, living in Israel at the time, is my initial thought, beyond the shock of seeing planes crashed into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, all of the insanity of what happened that day. My first thought living in Israel was, you know what? Now the whole world is going to understand what Israel deals with in terms of terrorism and in terms of the threat. And I was like, something positive will come of this. The world will see, you know, our daily existence in Israel, trying to protect against things like that. And of course, that wasn't the case. It wasn't like, suddenly everybody kind of, was empathetic with Israel, with the terror that had been going on there for a long time. It didn't happen. But that was my somewhat naive feeling as I remember 9/11. Jeffrey's asking how my dad is. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. He's doing well. He's doing better. Thank you for asking. He's not watching today. As you guys know, he usually watches with his attendant, but his woman who takes care of him. But she doesn't work weekends, and today is the beginning. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, he has someone else looking after him. So I guess that person doesn't necessarily, I guess, isn't my Facebook friend, but I'll try to fix that so my dad can watch. I'm sure he'll watch this next week. So that's lots of me blabbing. And now I can bring on my friend, Cheryl Fishbein. Cheryl, I have Cheryl's bio in front of me, but to be honest, the bio is so long that it would take me hours and hours to read it. She is on just about every single board that you can name, and we'll go through the alphabet with her a little bit. She is the head at this point of JCRC. She's involved with AJC, JCPA, JDC, UJA. So for all of you Jewish World insiders, JFN can play the alphabet game with us. But Cheryl is the ultimate, I will say, the ultimate Jewish lay leader, the ultimate New York Jewish lay leader, insider. She knows everyone knows her, and is just the person with the biggest heart that I know, and the biggest heart and the best Rolodex of anybody I know in the whole world. And I love her very, very much. Hello, Cheryl Fishbein.
Hello, Jonathan Ornstein. Good morning, good afternoon, all of you. It's such a pleasure to be here. And don't believe Jonathan about that Rolodex. He beats me hands down. Hands down.
Cheryl, are you kidding? Cheryl, it's not, we could do it. And I could have people write names of any Jew in the world. And I would say, do you know this person or this politician? Cheryl will tell you a story about every single one of them. So don't even try it, Cheryl. But before anything, Cheryl, 9/11 today, obviously, still, I don't want to say the wound is still open, but it really is. And people that are still sick, first responders. And I think it's worth taking a moment really to talk about that. Where were you on 9/11?
Oh, you don't really want to know this. I was about to get a colonoscopy. I had done the prep.
Oh my
I
God.
said to the doc, I went into the doctor's office. I knew the towers were coming down. And I said, hold up your hands. And I said, if they're not shaking, you are doing this test because I am not doing this prep another time. And so he did it. And then walking through the streets, and I'll tell you a little more backstory, but walking through the streets afterwards, people were shell shocked. Everything had shut down like rather quickly, which I knew was going to happen.
Were you on
And
the Upper East Side?
I was living on the Upper East Side, and I walked up from the doctor's office. I had to walk home. And I had been at the Army War College for training in the month of June that year. And I got to know many people in the Army and all the rest of it. They had a small cadre of lay leadership there for a week. It was quite amazing. And one of the things we were trained in was there's going to be a terrorist attack on New York, and it's coming fairly soon. And they didn't know where it was going to be, and they didn't know how it was going to happen, but they understood that it was going to happen. And so I knew what was going to happen when this terrorist attack happened, which was an immediate shutdown of the city, closing of the bridges, closing of the subways, everything. So of course the concern was, and Phil was in California. He had taken the flight that crashed that morning the day before.
Oh, wow.
Wow. And so he was stuck there, but my kids, one daughter was in college, and one was in Ramaz High School. And the high school one, I called the school and I said, when you dismiss, which you will soon, there are going to be kids stuck on Manhattan Island, not able to get home to New Jersey and Queens and the Bronx and all the rest. I said, send as many kids over as you can. And almost 20 kids came over. I had pizza. And one thing, kids are smarter than we are. You said you sat in Israel watching over and over and over and over again. The kids started watching, and then they said, nope. And then they started watching Disney movies and other things because they couldn't take it in. And the issues for the young kids and teenagers were, they saw their parents so shook up that their real safety net, they felt, had disappeared out from under them. And the idea was to try to keep the kids calm. I told my daughter, she was a Barnard, I told her, walk home. I said, don't get on any public transportation. We don't know if this is going to go any further. And so, and I am a first responder. So I was heavily involved in the response and down there when the fires were going, and how just overwhelming and frightening and scary it was for the city, because we really had no idea if anything was coming next and what was happening. But I have to give credit to the people of the city of New York. They were strong, they were resilient, they hung in there, they did what they had to do to ultimately rebuild. And that's what makes me feel optimistic about post-corona, that again, people are reading all kinds of doom and gloom, and yeah, the times are going to be difficult, but I am a big believer in New York City, in the love of the city and the strength of the city, and that we will come together and pull it back together again. And I think you know that, Jonathan. I think you believe that as well.
I believe that 100%.
Yeah.
You say that very beautifully. And I think that a lot of talk about, the people in New York, and now we have the technology that we don't need to be in the same place. We can connect to each other. I think that in many ways, while technology is helpful, it's nonsense. I'm sitting here talking to you, and I don't miss you any less because I'm able to talk to you.
Exactly.
And I don't think, oh my God, I really wish I
Exactly.
were in New York and doing what we do and staying with
Yep.
you and
Yep.
spending all this time. So it's not
eating black and white cookies in my kitchen, right?
black and white cookies in the kitchen, of course. But
Yeah.
I think people betting against New York at this point, essentially, they're saying that human nature has changed so much that people don't need to interact. And if people need to interact, there will always be certain hubs of places where people are drawn to, in some sense, the best and the brightest, and need to connect to one another in person. And if you're betting that we as people have changed so much that that's not necessary, maybe. But as long as people need to interact in New York City in person, then New York City will always be a hub of that interaction.
I totally agree with you. I see it with a lot of situations. I see it with my friends who have started to go back to work a little bit. I see it with Phil, who goes into the office once a week. I see it with just the feeling of being able to be in the same room as somebody else, even if you're social distancing. The interaction is always different than when you're using technology. It works. It's so much better. I see it with the JCRC, for example. We have a staff of around 30 people, most of them working virtually from home. And they're wonderful and hardworking and putting in sometimes more time than if they were in the office, tell you the truth, because it's easy to get sucked into that computer anytime, day or night, right? You don't have to commute into some place to get to work. But we all miss each other, and we miss having a face and a presence and to feel the aura, in a way, of what it means to get together and generate ideas and the rest. And as I said, they're doing unbelievable work, but there's a piece that's missing with the personal interaction. I totally agree with you. And I'm a psychologist, so you can imagine, the difference between between seeing somebody on Zoom or FaceTime, which is fine and wonderful, and you can get things done. But when a person comes in, which I've very slowly started, like one person a day after, sanitizing and all that kind of stuff, there's a difference. You feel it, there's like a subtle, unspoken feeling that you pick up that I'm sensitive to.
I think to me, there's a certain analogy, and I don't know if it makes sense for everyone, but when VCRs and that technology started to gain prominence and people started to have home theaters, and now with streaming, you think, wait a minute, why would anybody ever go to the movies? You have to pay a lot of money and maybe parking and popcorn or whatever. And you can have the same thing, really, if you go and download it, which I'm not advocating. You can have it for free sitting in your house everybody has 60-inch TVs and all of this. Yet people pay to sit in a movie theater and not even interact with strangers. Just that experience of sharing something and without not even talking to each other. The idea that movie theaters still exist and people go to the movies is one of the most powerful arguments that we need to just physically be near other people.
Well, I think you're 100% right. When television came out, that was also a time when everybody believed this is the death of the movie theater, and it didn't happen. And now we can stream everything. It's just not. It's not the same. I totally agree. I think the theaters are going to get a big hit, but things will crawl back, and you'll get to go to the. I'm looking forward to going and catching a movie for sure. Are you kidding? It'd be great.
See, I went to the movies recently. I mentioned the other day, we were about 300-seat movie theater. There were 6 of us in the movies.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Oh, they're in trouble. Cheryl, let's go backwards a little bit. Cheryl, as the most New Yorker, Cheryl, where did you grow up?
Brooklyn. Yes. Flatbush. Yes.
Real Brooklyn.
Real Brooklyn. Born and bred Brooklyn girl. And when I get like all excited about something, Phil makes fun and says, your Brooklyn's showing, because my a real accent comes back.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Brooklyn. And how Orthodox was your upbringing?
Modern, Zionist, Orthodox. My father comes from in Poland. He was a Beitarnik, Jabotinsky, right-wing Zionism, which is a secular Zionism actually. But in our house, I went to the yeshiva of Flatbush, which in those days really was modern Zionist, Hebrew-speaking Orthodox school. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful childhood.
You have some relatives, family though, that's a far more observant, let's say.
many of them are, we were considered the kind of apicorsim of the family, because I had, I went to a co-ed school. I had boys in my class. I learned Gemara, all that kind of stuff, which was not well accepted. And, no shaitel.
Scandalous, Cheryl. I can't even believe I have you on.
It's amazing. But you know what? I have to say, I love my family, good people, everybody, maybe not 100% approving, but totally accepting. And, I have good times, bursting in on all men situations at weddings, and, the tish and that kind of thing. And it's fun and it's fine. It really is.
Cheryl, you're a Polish citizen. Tell about where your family's from, and Ulanów and that whole history.
Well, Jonathan, you've been there, so
Of course I have.
connections to Poland run deep. Both of my parents are from a small town in Galicia called Ulanów in Polish, Iliniv in Yiddish. Around 5,000 Jews before the war. Most of them killed, just a very few. In my father's cadre, he was a teenager when the war broke out. There were about 106, 7, 8 boys, teenage boys. 6 survived out of that group. My father's story is he was slave labor for the Henkel Company. He was in 13 camps during the course of the war. He kept getting pushed around and pulled around. At one point, he was in Sachsenhausen, and Mengele did some medical experiments on him. He told me, we were very open about all of this in our home, so he told us all about his experiences and stories, and he was interviewed by Spielberg, so, his story can come up. My mother's story was different. She was younger. She was, I think, 12, around 12 when the war broke out, 13. Her family were in Russia, and she was in the Ural Mountains. There were labor camps there, but as she said, even though she despised the whole idea of communism, at least in the Urals and Siberia, the anti-Semitism didn't run high because everybody was miserable and everybody was in a difficult situation. But she did tell stories about the beauty of being there in the snow in the winters, and I guess that's why Phil and I do missions for the JDC, for the Joint, to Siberia in the winter every couple of years. And we show really there is a beauty there. And there is a beauty to the Jewish community because they were so far away from Moscow. They were able really to come together, help each other because life is so hard. And so, and Ulanów is this beautiful town. Right, Jonathan? Beautiful shtetl.
Beautiful.
And the first time my parents took us back in 1978, at the height of just terrible times in Poland, but we came back and the first thing I saw, you see all these pictures in black and white, you get off, you look, and it's so gorgeous. I said, Ma, you never told me how beautiful it is here, how fabulous. And they did talk about their childhood, except for the anti-Semitism part. They talked about their childhood as being safe and successful and beautiful. And, my father played football, soccer. He was a good football player. My mother, we talked about school. And when I went, and since then I have their report cards from 1935. There is a museum. What?
Good students?
My mother, straight A's, and she always used to say when I was a kid, the Jewish boys were really told to focus on cheder and math and geography. Math so they could do business, and geography so that in case they needed to run, they could run. And so I went over their report cards with the principal because my father is very brilliant, so I couldn't figure that out. And sure enough, my father got straight A's in math and geography, and the rest of it he was indifferent, and he was a real Talmud scholar. So, they followed through exactly for what the Jewish theme was supposed to be in those days. And the girls could learn everything. So my mother loved Polish poetry. She used to sing Polish songs. She used to, read in Polish and Yiddish, and and she was more of a literature type of person, but regular kids. And so she was in Russia, and then made her way back and smuggled across borders and ended up in Paris, and then from Paris to Toronto, and Toronto back to Brooklyn, where my father was actually waiting for her. He always had a crush on her. So
beautiful.
Nice romantic story.
Beautiful. And Juliet Kent is also family from
Yes.
Ulanov. She's
Yes.
watching. She
Say
goes,
hi to Julie. Yes, we have friends in common in Ulanov, and she also, her father went back and experienced that. And I really felt I wanted to help Jewish community and fix up the cemetery in Ulanov. And so therefore I got my Polish citizenship, which was not difficult to get. And
not for you.
Not for me, but no, I have, I have people who can help, get you through to get that citizenship and through the United States. Even if you're not living in the U.S., we can try to.
You know a guy.
What we know
a
the people. We know what to do. We know how to do it. And I have to say that it allowed me to create a foundation, a charitable foundation in Poland itself, that helps support the museum, and also helps that helped us get the cemetery. We got a whole new wall around the cemetery. It's beautifully done. And I have some wonderful friends in Ulanov that are friends of the Jews, boosters of the Jews, who are really watching out for what's going on there. So I find myself very fortunate, because these people are there, and they're so wonderful, and they're so righteous, in an atmosphere that's not so friendly to the Jews.
Yeah.
So
I think it's interesting that your parents really instilled this, I would say, love of Poland and this interest in Poland. It comes, it really, you see it all the time with you.
You don't see it all that often, and
No.
but it, I think what it was is they have good memories. They didn't really hit adulthood yet there, with all of the real, the heavy duty anti-Semitism, being blocked from wanting to do whatever they wanted to do. And so, they had a lot of happy memories of their childhood friends, which is mixed with sadness, of course, because most of them ended up not surviving. But so there were good things and good songs and the food, of course, that's what you take with you all the time. And the food is wonderful. I know, Jonathan, you won't eat my cholent, but still. But there is, it's instilled in you, and it sort of hit my kishkis also. And it's going through my children as well. They're feeling it as well.
And they all have a citizenship as well, don't they? Both.
They all have citizenship, and their children have citizenship. And my husband, who had no way to get it, we did petition the government, because as a booster of Poland and what happens in Poland and our many connections to Poland, we did petition President Duda, and he signed the papers, and Phil is a citizen as well. And he really got a fancy letter and a signature and a whole thing. It's great.
I have one of those too. I have one from President Komorowski.
There you go. Okay.
So I got my citizenship also through the president.
That's great. That's great.
It's interesting. The only difference is, it doesn't pass on to your children. But
no, well, for me it did, but for Phil it doesn't.
Right, if you get it through the presidential way. So, but
you have a kasha there. You're okay.
I have a kasha, so we're okay. We're okay. So Cheryl, also taking back a little bit. So you mentioned that you're a therapist and a lawyer. Talk about this: a lawyer and a therapist. How does one go about? How does one just become a lawyer and a therapist?
So at first I got my PhD in clinical psychology, because that was really my first love, and I love people, and I think I love the ability to get to know people and to help them through issues, help them help themselves. It's not me doing it, it's them doing it. And I think for me, it's one of my greatest strengths. And then at some point, 10 years into it, I thought, you know, I was always sort of a little conflicted because I wanted to also be a lawyer, but I went for the PhD first to practice in clinical psychology. You can make your own hours, you can have a family, it's hard work to get it, but once you have it and you're doing this, it works fairly well. So I said, okay, let me apply to law school and see how that works. And so I was living in New Rochelle in Westchester at the time, and I said, I can only commute. I had 2 kids, little girls at the time, and I applied to 3 schools that I could commute to. I applied to Yale and Columbia and NYU, and I said, if I make one of those, I'll go. And I got waitlisted on 2, and I got accepted to NYU, and so I started making the commute to go to law school at NYU, which I loved because I love school. And I could do it with a different attitude. And I'll tell you why. I was married. I was living in a house, I had my own house. I had kids. I had everything. And so I had a very different perspective on school. I knew that no one was going to ask me what I got on my contracts final. Ever, right? No one was, now you're going to ask me, I know, but no one is going to.
I'm making notes.
But no one was going to. So the level of anxiety about, getting past it, I knew I could pass it. At least that I knew if I had full time and I could really focus. I was going full time, but if I knew that I could focus as much, because I was still working, I was still seeing patients together with it and running the house and all the rest. But what turned out was I did fairly well. I worked for the Federal Reserve Bank for 2 years. I did banking law because you can't know how to do something until you really do it. I got my bar and then went back to the thing that I loved. And what I do is I combine. So I do marital therapy, but I also do prenuptial. I help people negotiate prenuptial agreements, postnuptial agreements, estate negotiations. I do all kinds of help people negotiate. I don't do the paperwork. I send them to practicing lawyers. I do divorce mediation, those kinds of things, because I bring an extra skill to it, and it's quite interesting. And I try to keep people out of court, protecting their children, and that's the profession.
Now, it's amazing to hear when you discuss, I've spent a lot of time with you.
Yep.
Lived, when I'm in New York, I stay with you in Phil, and you're so gracious in having me in Kasha, and I feel really like family, and spend a lot of time. And I have never seen anybody with the time management skills able to do essentially multiple full-time jobs and careers while just remaining calm and never getting flustered. And it's fascinating to me, because I think most people know you through your philanthropy and through your philanthropic involvement, and involved in most, strange to even say it, but most major Jewish New York important organizations have a Cheryl Fishbein component, and you have some involvement, or you just had, or you rotated off and you're going back. But I mean, it's amazing to me, this idea, first of all, that you would even, how you're able to do the philanthropy and being this the community leader, but then as well with these managing this other career. It's something that is, have you always just been, particularly gifted in terms of the way that you've been able to use your time? Because it's not something that I've ever seen before.
Part of it's a gift. Part of it, I thank God for giving me a lot of energy and discipline. Really, I mean, without that, I would be falling on my face. Sometimes it is a lot, but I really try to be disciplined about it, and also understand that at some point, close the computer, put away the phone, don't answer it. You can call somebody back, and you have to really be disciplined about that, because we're all addicted to everything that we have to do. And you're right, I have a lot to do. Family, of course, has to be absolutely number one, and friends, and their needs. Philanthropy, I have to say, and that is just near and dear to my heart, and I always want to do it, and I always want to do it well. And the Jewish community is just so important and needs so much protection. And I'm fortunate in a way that I can do it, and that particularly now with the JCRC of New York and the rise in anti-Semitism and the security needs of the community, which are overwhelming. And in New York City, we have over 2,000 Jewish community centers, synagogues, schools, 2,000, all of which need protection, and JCRC is at the center of it. And now, especially with everything going on across the country, interfaith, intergroup, our relationships with the Black community, our relationships with the Latinos, with the Asians, with Southeast Asians, with everybody, it's centered at JCRC, and we take all of it so seriously and are working so hard that, to tell you the truth, Jonathan, it's like a second full-time job in terms of doing it, and we do it well, and it's exciting, and it's good.
No, it's an amazing organization, and just so needed these days in a complex city, in a complex world. That what JCRC is doing is sort of this liaison and connecting the Jewish community to these different communities. And I see you're all the time meeting with the mayor and the chief of police and lobbying on behalf of Jews and representing this. So it's I think not people always. I think JCRC is organizations like that, and JCPA to some degree. These organizations that sort of make sure that Jews have their place in the world and are safe and are represented, are sometimes overlooked a little bit. And I think that it's important that they get, JCRC in New York, for example, gets its due, and understanding that there's just really responsible for the entire Jewish community, and making sure that the machine continues to move and be safe.
Yeah, thank you. We're trying, and we take it seriously, and we mean it. We really do mean it. And you could see the depth of our friendships with, the communities across New York City. I'll just give you one example that's from years ago. We were trying to do outreach with the Muslim community in New York. Many in South Brooklyn, living in South Brooklyn, where the Russians are as well. Many very, very poor. And we together with a dear friend, his name is Mohammed Rasby, who is a major leader in the Pakistani community. We decided to, and Rabbi Bob Kaplan on this side, many of you know who are watching know who he is, and is in charge of our interfaith and intergroup relationships. We decided, how do we start talking? Well, we're not going to start talking about Israel, and we're not going to start talking about peace in the Middle East. And to tell you the truth, that's not really the issue in South Brooklyn. But what we can talk about is healthcare. And for the elderly, transportation for elderly to get to the doctors, healthcare coverage, you name it, poverty, hunger. These are things that really touch the poor Jews and the poor Muslims. And so we started roundtables, and we started bringing together people to solve these problems. And guess what happened? Of course, these are the same issues. Friendships were created, commonalities were created, and it has turned into a continuing dialogue, a continuing one community helping the other, one community helping solve issues with the other. And you know what? So we know that if we're in trouble, we have people that we could reach out to. And I'll tell you a cute story. Our daughter Erica was in a taxi one day, and her driver was Pakistani, and she said to him, "Oh, do you know?" And she started to list some of the people in South Brooklyn that were in this organization and working. And do you know Mo Rosby? And he said, "Of course." And it turned into a whole, even with the taxi driver. So you see, it spreads and it creates goodwill. We're doing the same, of course, in Crown Heights now. We're starting a whole new, this time more with the Black community and the Jewish community, and in Williamsburg, what's happening there with the Latinos? Both those neighborhoods are gentrifying. You know that. So of course the poor, Jews, Blacks, Latinos, can't find housing.
Yeah.
The tension is incredible. And now with COVID, it's even higher and more difficult. And so we're working at it. It's very, very, very important and interesting. And healthcare as well, of course, remains number one because of COVID right now.
Well, I think it's so wonderful that you're in the position that you're in and able to do that. It's hard to imagine anybody else doing that as well as you do, just with your sort of so connected to everybody, that it's the perfect
No, thank you. No, it's really Michael Miller and his staff, and Bob Kaplan doing it, and Mitch Silver and David Pollock, and just there's so many important people. I'm not going to mention all of them. They're just wonderful, and they know how I feel about them. Look them up and check it out. It's great. It's really great.
So looking at it, Cheryl, you have such a unique perspective on the Jewish world and such an understanding of the sort of, really this bird's eye view of the Jewish world that many people don't have. What are the main issues, if you had to say? I mean, is it anti-Semitism? Is it poverty? I mean, people don't talk, poverty, Jews are all rich and stuff, but there's tremendous poverty. Even to me, something that I think is really the greatest real shame of the Jewish community. And there are things that we have to be proud of, and there are things that we should also not be very proud of. But the idea of Holocaust survivors living in poverty is something to me that just
it's shameful.
Shameful. So if you're looking at it from your point of view, I mean, you can either New York or really even on the national level, because you're also involved nationally in these national AJC, JDC, national organizations as well. JFN, Jewish Funders Network. What do you see as sort of maybe the main issues as we move forward as a community?
Anti-Semitism. If I have to answer it, a close second.
Why is that?
I'll explain it to you. I'll tell you what it is.
Why is that, Cheryl? Why is that? Why are we a resurgence? Excuse me for interrupting, but I think that we are from a generation that thought anti-Semitism was going in the right direction, and now we see that it's not.
Because in our generation, I believe the anti-Semitism was there. And everybody was saying, "Oh, this is a place, no more anti-Semitism." I never believed it, never, ever believed it. But there was an atmosphere that it was politically incorrect to be anti-Semitic. If you were anti-Semitic, you could talk about it maybe with whoever friends you were, against the Jews. But in this country now, unfortunately, from the right to the left, it's okay to be anti-Semitic, and it's horrible. And an atmosphere has been created so that it is socially acceptable to be anti-Semitic, and that's what makes me so scared. As we all know,
Cheryl, is that anti-Semitism in terms of naked anti-Semitism, Jews this, Jews that, or is it sort of camouflaged in terms of Zionism or Israel in that sense?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. You know that. I mean, Charlottesville was naked anti-Semitism. The DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, it's very clear, it's camouflaged by anti-Israel, by BDS. And what it does is it allows the real fringes to really act out and to really start to do actions. Now, what happened was COVID pushed it back into the internet because people weren't out as much. But the fact of the matter is, let's hope, but COVID is going to slowly go away, and it's going to come out. And that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're seeing all over the place. So now you really are seeing a lot of it and a lot more on the internet. Many cartoons of the COVID virus, the round COVID virus with a big nose and a beard and payas, and we have to kill COVID. Okay, and we have to kill the Jews. It's those kinds of things are everywhere. And so if it's everywhere and people are seeing it and people are looking for it, it allows them to be more open about it, because you figure, I'm seeing it all over the internet. Guess what? When the time comes, I'll be able to act on it. And, and more of these attacks have happened. And now, the fear, of course, is that, we've got synagogues starting to open, schools starting to open, many more, unfortunately, opportunities to act out against the Jews, many more.
And what is the answer? I'm going to say the cliche, just education, or we can protect as much as we can protect, but you can't protect everything all the time. And you need a change in people's minds, as opposed to only purely preventing them from doing harm. So what is the solution?
Well, you do have to do education. Normally, when you do catch kids doing stuff, painting swastikas and things like that, the answer had traditionally been, if you grab them to doing these kinds of hate crimes, is you bring them to a Holocaust museum, right? And suddenly they understand what they were doing. So yes, those kinds of things, education helps with the young people. With people who are really killing, nothing is going to help that. And I don't think anything is going to help the DSA, and anything is going to help the skinheads, except if the progressives, and they call them progressives, or the left or the extreme right, if they see that there is no support out there in the general population, right, they're not going to do it. Yeah. They're not going to. Right?
I agree. To me, there'll always be bad people. They're always going to do what they're going to do. And the world, the future, the direction of things in any area really is determined not by those people, but by whether those people find safe harbor and find acceptance. And I always felt, not to get into the whole Palestinian-Israeli sort of issue, but I was always less, not to say bothered, but I understood that if you're a Palestinian that hates Israel and you feel that or you want to do things, blowing things up, whatever, you're doing that. And if the world accepts that, then I'm much more angry with the world than I am with the person who's doing that. The person doing that to me is wrong, but there's the idea of having, so I think you're right. There'll always be anti-Semites, and some we can get to and some we can't, but it's more like this tacit acceptance, passive acceptance of anti-Semitism in the general population, or racism or anything else, that really is the problem. And this idea
Absolutely.
of don't be a bystander.
Yeah. And by the way, if you start to accept anti-Semitism and you say, it's only the Jews, there aren't so many of them, who really cares? Eventually, whoever you are, it's going to hit you. It doesn't stop with anti-Semitism, as we've seen over and over and over again in the world.
Never does.
So, and that's why we have to fight so hard against racism as well. It's the partner of anti-Semitism, and we have to create partnerships and coalitions and communicate. And by the way, communication is probably the most important thing, as we've said earlier today. We all have the same problems, right? We're all fighting COVID. We all are fighting poverty. We are all looking for jobs. We all have it in common. We have to help each other, not hurt each other. And it might be trite to say it, but that's really the message.
No, absolutely. And I think it's important to say it, and it's important, you can never say it too often. And I guess the danger there is that if we as a people, or if any people, if African Americans spend all their energy fighting racism, or if the Jews spend all their energy fighting anti-Semitism, then you're just against and you're not for. So I think that's the real challenge. Not that we don't need to fight, we do, but we need to always find that balance. I guess that's.
Yep. Yeah. And I totally agree with you. And we're trying. We're trying. And the poverty piece, I just want to add one little piece, is we've got, thank God, in New York, we have UJA Federation of New York and their agency system and their special projects to help Holocaust survivors. And we have the claims conference, and with the agencies, the ones that are particularly involved in fighting, the JCCs in New York City, the JCCs do quite a bit of social service, different than the rest of the country. And so, and you do some as well. So you understand, you have programs for the elderly and you have programs for Holocaust survivors. And so we're doing the same thing as well through our agency system, the JCH of Bensonhurst and Shorefront Y, and you know, all the Russians in South Brooklyn and self-help and all the rest of it. And we are working, you know, at Alliance on the Lower East Side. We have a whole system of agencies that are working very hard to combat the poverty. There just isn't enough money, you know, and I encourage everybody to give to your agencies and give, you know, to UJA, and let's and UJA is a major funder of the security initiative. And so please, you know, open your wallets wide, and we try in our family to do the best we can. We do.
And the UJA, should also mention, is you know, for years a strong supporter of JCC Krakow. So not only doing good in New York, but really around the world, Israel and here in Poland. So it's very important. Absolutely. Cheryl, I'm very aware of your hard time finish. We talked about your time management. So I will. I don't want, God forbid, I'm the one who messes with your time management.
Yes.
Cheryl, your Shabbat dinners, your famous Shabbat dinners, the Algonquin round table of the 21st century. When starting, you know, you can go to these Shabbat dinners in Cheryl's apartment, her beautiful apartment, and you find the Muslim leaders and rabbis and ambassadors, and chief of police, you never know who you're going to sit next to at this most amazing Shabbat dinners. So when are they? I assume that they're not going on now, but when do you have an idea? When are they starting up?
I have to tell you, I miss them desperately. It's been they're so wonderful, and such beautiful friendships and memories that come out of them. So slowly, right now I'm in Chatham, New York. I'm upstate. So we have done very small, you know, just one couple friends, you know, outside. And when we get the okay, we'll start them again. But right now, COVID, you know, people would be uncomfortable if I even invited. I don't want people to be put on the spot, but we should all be healthy and happy. And Jonathan, on your next trip to New York, I promise you a huge Shabbat dinner with, you know, with all kinds of wonderful, wonderful people. And, you know, all of you on this Zoom, I don't know how many of you are on. How many participants do we have right now, Jonathan?
Be careful of inviting all of the world that will see it. 30.
Okay, so 30 of you, you will probably have my email address anyway, or when you watch this, you know, the rerun, just let me know that you're interested and we'll see if we can make it happen. But right now, unfortunately, no big public dinners, but I look forward to entertaining and hosting people and just.
Absolutely, they're very special. So Cheryl, I don't have to ask you about Latka versus Hamantashen because you very valiantly defended the honor of Latka a couple of months ago. So there's that. But I will ask you my final question. What are your 3 favorite movies, Cheryl Fishbein?
Oh my gosh. My 3 favorite movies. The Third Man.
Okay, classic.
The first Star Wars.
Classic.
And the third, When Harry Met Sally.
Oh, New York film. That's a good 3. Get the spy film, the science fiction classic,
the film noir, the zoo. Yes.
Perfect.
I Like to be well-rounded. What can I say?
Perfect.
And I
Well,
really haven't thought of this. This is, very interesting that I came up with this. You got it right off the cuff. And I want to add one thing. Just wishing everybody a Shana Tova Mituka, a sweet, healthy year, that we should vanquish COVID and be able to get back to a new normal that we could all be happy with. And that it should be a world of just peace and good feelings that people should have for each other, and special love for you, Jonathan, and your family and your community in Krakow that I can't wait to come visit.
Cheryl, thank you for all that you do as a friend, as a supporter, as a board member, as just really an inspiration in life to me and to all of us here, and to all of us around the world. And with more people like you, the world would be in a much better position. Sending much love, Cheryl. Love to Phil and everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cheryl Fishbein.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.